Welcome to the Explainer. Today we're going to talk about a programming language that most people have never even heard of. But here's the crazy part. It's the language that secretly powered a revolution, running on billions of Apple devices. Yeah, everything from the Mac to the very first iPhone. So what was it? Well, the answer might actually surprise you. It's a story about a brilliant idea, how it almost disappeared completely, and then made one of the biggest comebacks in tech history. All right, here's how we're going to break it down. We'll start with its pretty unusual origins, then get into the dramatic story of how Steve Jobs basically saved it from being forgotten. After that, we'll unpack the core ideas that made it so special, see how it became the engine of the iPhone app boom, and finally, look at the legacy that, believe it or not, is still with us today. So let's rewind to the early 80s. You've got these two developers, Brad Cox and Tom Love, and they have this big idea. They wanted to build software that was truly reusable, like Lego bricks. To do that, they decided to smash together the best parts of two totally different programming worlds. Okay, so on one hand, you had C. Think of C as this raw, powerful, super efficient engine. It's fast, it's powerful, it's the industry standard for getting stuff done close to the hardware. But on the other hand, you had this language called Smalltalk. And Smalltalk, it was different. It was incredibly flexible, almost like a set of intelligent Legos, where every single piece knew what it was and how to talk to all the other pieces. The big idea here? Put those smart, dynamic Legos on top of that raw, powerful engine. And what they got was Objective-C. Now, the key thing to understand is that it was a strict superset of C. That sounds technical, but all it really means is that it was C, with this powerful new layer of object-oriented goodness on top. Any C code you already had, it just worked. No need to throw anything out. You just got to add these amazing new superpowers to it. But having a great idea isn't always enough to make it. For a while there, it really looked like Objective-C was just going to fade into obscurity. That is, until it was rescued by a name you've probably heard of. Seriously, for years after it was created, Objective-C was this language wandering in the wilderness. It was this brilliant concept with no real home. And then everything changed. Steve Jobs, after he'd been forced out of Apple, started a new company called Next. And Next made a huge bet. They chose Objective-C to be the foundation, the very bedrock of their super advanced operating system. That one decision, that one bet, would completely alter the course of tech history when a struggling Apple decided to buy Next, bringing both Jobs and his favorite language right back home. And you have to understand that this was the crucial moment. This wasn't just some business deal to get Steve Jobs back in the building. No way. This was a technological transplant. Apple inherited the entire software foundation that Next had built, and that foundation would become the future. First macOS X, and then the operating system for the iPhone. Okay, so what was it about Objective-C that made it so different? Let's get into how it actually works, because it's built on a few really powerful and pretty unique ideas that gave it its special sauce. All right, the absolute biggest idea here is something called message passing. Now, in most programming languages, you call a function. Think of that like having a specific hardwired light switch for every single light in your house. It's fixed. But in Objective-C, you send a message to an object. This is totally different. It's more like asking a smart home assistant, hey, turn on the kitchen light. The assistant figures out how to do it right at that moment, at what we call runtime, when the program is actually running. That flexibility is everything. You can even see the difference in the syntax. The traditional C++ call looks like a direct order, but look at the Objective-C version with those brackets. That's not a direct order, it's a request. It's like sending a letter into the postal system versus having a direct hardwired phone line. With the letter, you just put it in the mail, and you trust that the system will get it to the right recipient, who then decides what to do with it. That dynamic dispatch is what gave the language its incredible power. Then there's this feature called categories, which obviously was a total game changer. Imagine the operating system gives you this perfectly sealed toolbox. The tools inside are great, but you can't open it up to add your own. Well, categories let you magically add your own custom tools to that sealed box without ever breaking it open. You could literally teach the system's own building blocks new tricks. That was unbelievably powerful for developers. And finally, we have protocols. A protocol is kind of like a job description. It doesn't actually do any of the work itself, right? It just lists out what work needs to be done.
It's a contract. Any object can promise to follow that contract, and because they all agree on the rules, completely different parts of a program can work together seamlessly and reliably.
So, when you put it all together, this foundation of dynamic messaging, this incredible flexibility, Objective-C was in the perfect place at the perfect time. It was poised to become the engine for the single biggest change in computing we've ever seen, the mobile app.
And this is why all this old history actually matters to you. If you ever use one of those first iPhones, this is the code that made it all happen. That iconic "there's an app for that" moment, that was made possible by Objective-C. Every time you scrolled, every tap, every early game you got hooked on, that was all powered by this language that Steve Jobs brought back with him from Next. And this whole explosion was enabled by two key toolkits. For the Mac, it was called Cocoa. For the iPhone, it was Cocoa Touch. Just think of these as massive pre-built libraries of code, basically giant boxes of digital Legos for everything an app could possibly need. Buttons, menus, animations, you name it. Developers didn't have to start from scratch. They could just grab these Objective-C building blocks and create amazing apps faster than ever before. But as we all know, technology never, ever stands still. Objective-C had its golden age, for sure, but Apple knew it was time to start thinking about a language for the next 20 years. And then, bam, at their 2014 developer conference, Apple drops a bombshell, a brand new language called Swift. And the way they described it is just perfect, Objective-C without the C. The idea was brilliant. Keep all the powerful dynamic ideas from Smalltalk that made Objective-C so great, but get rid of the old, sometimes clunky and unsafe C foundation and replace it with something modern, fast, and way easier for new developers to learn.
And that's why it's so important to see Swift not as a replacement, but as an evolution. The DNA of Objective-C, that whole philosophy of flexibility and dynamic objects, it's woven right into the fabric of Swift. And even today, if you could look deep inside your Mac or your iPhone, you'd find millions of lines of battle-tested Objective-C still running the show, keeping things going behind the scenes.
You know, the story of Objective-C is this perfect reminder that the next world-changing piece of tech might not be a shiny new gadget. It could just be a single, elegant idea in code sitting on a shelf, just waiting for its moment. I mean, think about it. It went from a niche experiment to the absolute engine of the mobile revolution. Its journey just proves that the programming languages we're building with today are quietly, right now, laying the foundation for the world we're all going to be living in tomorrow. So it really makes you wonder, what's next?